Once you can accept the universe as matter expanding into nothing that is something, wearing stripes and with plaid comes easily. Albert Einstein. Jan will light the chalice in the sanctuary this morning. Those of you at home are invited to light your own chalice now. Come hearts that are open and hearts that are closed by trials and sorrows, loss and misgivings. Come seekers, searching for answers, for respite, or a space to unleash your joy. Here, all are welcome. No excuses are needed, nor explanations. Bring your whole heart and let it be touched. As we light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, this moment belongs to each of us. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted, even though we love your voices. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with us as loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. Please stand in body and or spirit and sing the opening hymn, With Joy We Claim the Growing Light, number 345.
With joy we claim the growing light, advancing thought and widening view. The larger freedom, clearer sight, which from the old unfold the new. With wider view come loftier goal, with fuller light, more good to see. With freedom, truer self-control, with knowledge, deeper reverence be.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us today. Our UUCC sanctuary sits on land that the Salinan and Chumash indigenous peoples historically inhabited. We honor their contribution to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to gather in faith on their unceded territory. Let us respect their legacy and protect their history as we occupy this sacred space. As Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in faith, in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation run by the democratic process. We invite speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak in our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a wide variety of topics like today and areas of interest that connect with the UU 7 principles. Today's service centers around the third principle, which is we affirm and promote the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. My name is Dolores Miera, and I am your worship associate for this morning's service. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors, and many of you. It's great to see you all. We're glad you joined us this morning, and if you wish, please raise your hand if you would like to introduce yourself or your guest. Yes, Amanda.
I brought my friend Monique.
Hi, Monique.
Great.
Yes.
I'm Jenny. I'm from the UU congregation in Fresno.
I'm Maria Rao. I'm from the Diane Marker.
Excellent. Okay, great. Great to see you all. If you're not on the mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities and or sign up on the little sheet out there. And please check out what's happening, the e-blast sent to you every week. This is a great way to keep up to date with our latest news. Lori, why don't you stand up? This is Lori, who does all our newsletter in case, yay, right? In case you have something that needs to go into it, that's the gal to email to. If you wish to see this or any of the past Zoom services, the recordings can be found on the UUCC website and on Facebook. Thanks to Lori. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise to which we aspire. Let us now recite the UUCC affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any special announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point, and if something needs more explanation, contact the person after the service. If you'd like to make an announcement, please raise your hand, and when Ben or I call your name, please step up to the podium or unmute yourself and then speak. No, yes, Kat.
Hello. We're still collecting socks. The receptacle for the socks is over in the lobby there. And as of October 1st, we're going to be collecting warm jackets, warm sweaters, anything warm, male or female. And Marcia, you can leave what you have here at the church today because I'm going to be leaving early. Also have to get it from the Yeah, and just leave it here and I'll come by and get it. The other thing I wanted to say was this Friday at 2 o'clock, some of the social and environmental justice people are gathering here with me to put together our annual winter gift bags for the unhoused community here in Cambria and the one in San Simeon as well. 2 o'clock this Friday. So if anybody wants to join us, it's not going to take long. The more hands, the better. So thank you if you can do that, and just come for a visit, even if you don't want to work. Thank you.
Any other announcements? No? Okay. Anybody on Zoom?
I do not see anyone on Zoom.
No, apparently not. Okay, great. Next week, Reverend Carrie Kiyohara will present Cultivating the Heart of Compassion. Reverend Carrie's presence will be particularly profound in that he and his parishioners have been assisting the victims in the Lahaina fire, particularly those who have lost Buddhist temple at the Lahaina Jodo mission. We offered to reschedule his talk, but Reverend Carey expressed a strong desire to be with us next Sunday to share his message. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life. Express a gratitude or perhaps offer an acknowledgement, but please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and concerns which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. Our world is in crisis because of the absence of consciousness, said Terence McKenna, an American ethnobotanist who wrote Food of the Gods, The Search for the Original Tree of Knowledge and the Radical History of Plants, Drugs, and Human Evolution. To a great extent, we are kept from looking at ourselves, our inconsistencies and ambiguities, our lack of humanity by ourselves, our lack of humanity by staying frightened, dealing with man-made illnesses, being bombarded by the catastrophes and news all over the globe, trying to stay on top of the technology. We are very busy people. maybe too obsessed, absorbed, or preoccupied to know what would it be like, instead of complying to the commands of society, to have a feeling of shared humanity, a deep felt sense of unity to all life. Let us enter a place of peace and serenity where you are one with your spiritual being. Be at peace within yourself, within your space, where the absence of all that is temporal is its most cherished gift. Let us enter the stillness. When love and compassion are present in us and we send them outward, then that is truly prayer. Further, in sending love outward, we may notice a change in our own heart.
In the words of Stan Groff, one of the principal developers of transpersonal psychology and research into the use of non-ordinary states of consciousness for purposes of psychological healing, deep self-exploration, and obtaining growth and insights into the human psyche. Quote, "In the kind of world we have today, transformation of humanity might well be our only real hope for survival. The moment could be ripe for psychotherapy to entertain a completely new paradigm, to resolve the conflict between the biologically based treatments and psychodynamic treatments. They have been pitted against each other for legitimacy and resources. Is mental illness a disorder of chemistry, or is it a loss of meaning in one's life? Psychedelic treatments are the wedding of those two approaches."
The anthem today is Woodstock by Joni Mitchell and will be sung by Diane DeMarco.
To get back to the land and set my soul free. We are stardust, golden, and we've got to get ourselves
Thank you, Diane and Jan. That was great. Today's talk is titled Awakening Journey, to be delivered by Diane DeMarco. The first growth path that Diane pursued was to become a high school English and drama teacher, and she obtained a secondary life credential when she graduated CSUN. She then taught high school for 10 years and junior college for another 8. The second growth path Diane pursued was to become a marriage and family therapist. So she went for her master's degree and then opened up a private practice at the Healing Tree in Burbank. She's still practicing psychotherapy since she was licensed in 1985. The third personal growth path Diane is pursuing is to promote helping people suffer less in the least amount of time through non-ordinary state of consciousness. Did she herself actually tune in, turn on, and drop out? There's only one way to find out. Diane.
It was not long after the music started that my first mushroom journey took its effect. That was 18 months ago, 2022. I had wanted to experience what I missed out in my youth, so I searched for a sitter, a guide who would support me throughout the heroic journey. Heroic meaning larger dose. And I found her in Morro Bay. Luckily, she provided the mushrooms, and off I went. I took 1.5 grams, which is a relatively low dose when it comes to heroic journeys. After I consumed, let's go here. After I consumed the psilocybin, I lay down on the mattress to settle in more and be with the music. I started to notice designs, patterns, and colors moving up and down a changing staircase, and interesting shapes. I also was aware of my own inner voice talking and was disappointed that I was simply in the experience rather than narrating it and was disappointed that I wasn't simply in the experience, but rather I was narrating it to myself. I also thought, how disappointing it is to realize that this is all there was to the hype about psychedelics. Even my dreams at home at night were a lot better than this. At least they had symbolic meaning. I don't know at one point my experience changed, but it did. It was as though I had let go finally. No more self-consciousness as my ego disappeared, and now instead I became immersed in the music that was being played. It enveloped me, and then my body started to move. I was spontaneously creating a choreography with the rhythms and notes, and it all came through me without effort. I felt like I was part of an exquisite weaving together of the outside music, my own vocal tones, and body movements. My body and mind were vibrating, harmoniously dancing and vocalizing in a once-in-a-lifetime dance. What was more significant was towards the end of the journey, when a big shift took place. Hello? Okay. When I looked inward into my own body, I saw my heart, which to my surprise was held down by barbed wire. And I immediately recognized that it had been that way for a very long time. It seems so clear now why. It was hate that greeted me from one sibling when I was born, a vacant father, and a mother who had very little ability to be one. And it occurred to me that I had protected my heart so I could avoid the pain of being loathed by a sibling and invisible to my parents. It explained why I had been so anxious for so much my childhood and much of my early adult life. Then I looked up and I spotted my parents holding hands, smiling and happy. They came together in order to help me. They were looking at me. They saw me. It became clear to me that they had come to help me loosen the bondage inside my chest. I was surprised to see them together. It was very rare. It was hard to find this picture. After all, they had divorced after 39 years of a marriage that could be described as one that shouldn't have taken place to begin with. They had rarely connected. So here they were, telling me together that they wanted me to know how much they loved me and that I had been loved. I wasn't sure if I should accept this declaration of love, but I heard a voice inside saying, "Diane, don't resist this. They are offering to give you a gift of a lifetime, what you've always wanted. Open to it." It wasn't easy, and it took a while, but I did. And with that, I started to cry. As I cried, their love continued to surround me, and I knew that I had been loved by my parents after all, to the best of their ability. There were more vocals coming out of me, more movements helping me imprint these moments of love. For the first time, I felt I belonged, accepting the open love and affection from my parents. No wounds, only love. We had a bonded, loving connection for this moment, once and for always, now and forever. I drank it all in, and now belonged to me. I felt the incredible love and acceptance I had for my parents, but also could understand the pain each one of them had gone through, too, in their own lives. I started sobbing now for the knowing and understanding of it all. Once that love opened, I heard myself saying out loud, "Yes." First I whispered it, then repeated the word slowly, getting louder. I said it again, then again and again and again and again, over and over. Yes, yes, yes to love. Yes to my father's love. Yes to my mother's love. Yes, my heart had been blocked, imprisoned by the beliefs I had from my childhood. Now my heart was being released from the harsh barbed wires that had been created so long ago. I continued saying yes to all of it. The yes had a life of its own, and with each yes, I breathed in more acceptance, more joy, and more love. I remember thinking that this was truly nothing short of a miracle. As the journey came to an end, I continued to hear the word yes, but also felt incredible amount of gratitude to my facilitator and to my best friend for providing transportation and making this journey happen. And at that point, my heart felt bigger than I was. It was like I was inside my own heart. Yes, yes, yes. The use of psychedelics was a radical way of breaking through some very powerful mindsets of habits of thought, and it opened me to a deeper truth in my being. I had experienced a psychological healing through self-exploration and had obtained growth and insights into the human psyche. This is what they call opening up your consciousness. In my youth, the door to psychedelics had been slammed shut. That door is now once again open, but it isn't just ajar. It's wide open, and soon to be possibly the most significant medicine that our culture may ever know. Many cultures have been using psychoactive plants for thousands of years to treat and diagnose medical ailments. It's time to once again correct our thinking about psychedelics and consider it as a most powerful medicine. W.R. Miller, American clinical psychologist and emeritus distinguished professor of psychology and psychiatry at the University of New Mexico, wrote, "Mystical experiences are uniquely interesting and important to study because they are associated with abrupt, substantial, and sustained changes in behavior and perception for the better." End quote. After decades of silence, psychedelics and the research that is being published is now making a huge comeback to help humans deal psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. This time, the substance is being thoroughly evaluated to a higher scientific rigor and standard of transparency than ever before. It's all producing surprising results. Half a century after psychedelics were banned in this country, we are in the midst of a global renaissance of research which is showing great promise. Psychedelics are providing new ways to help stop, to help psychological problems. PTSD is number one. Depression is huge, and it's being helped by many, many people. Also suicide, also anxiety, also addictions, also chronic low pain, obsessive compulsive disorder, end of life emotional pain, bereavement reactions, overcoming eating disorders, trials on Parkinson's they're doing now. And psychedelics help to create this for all people who seem to go through it feeling valued, experiencing more confidence and understanding of what it is in the way of personal psychological process. Okay. Professional guides are already being trained and certified. The California Institute of Integral Studies, one university of many, graduated its first 42 therapists, even though it is still illegal to use psychedelics in the United States. But the market is readying itself for a paradigm shift. This time, licensed professional guides or sitters are required to be present to help individuals integrate when they experience going down the rabbit hole. Personal guides help to keep you safe. They oversee the amount of medicine taken. They help you to understand the significance of personal images during these journeys, and that is what changes us. One study found that even bad trips have given people life-altering insights. A small number of treatments with psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy can offer significant, sustained alleviation to symptoms of multiple psychiatric conditions without adverse effects. Right now, there's money pouring into this area, and there's actually a solid path to medical approval. Rick Dobrin, the creator of the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelics, points out that many of the people who design the trials or run the institutions are of the generation who are well acquainted with psilocybin and LSD. And this is true of Timothy Leary, who should be given credit. There would be no second wave happening now if Leary hadn't turned on a whole generation back then. Quote, he said, "I learned more about psychology in the 5 hours after taking these mushrooms than in the preceding 15 years of studying and doing research in psychology." End of quote. Did you know that before the mid-1960s effectively ended all major psychedelic research programs, over 2,000 papers had been published in the world describing almost all positive results and cautionary measures to take for over 40,000 patients who took psychedelic drugs with few side effects and a high level of safety. It was Sidney Gottlieb with the CIA who started testing with LSD. It was he who brought LSD to America. He was the unwitting godfather of the entire LSD counterculture. In the early 1950s, he arranged for the CIA to pay $240,000 to buy the world's entire supply of LSD. And he brought this to the United States and he began spreading it around to the hospitals, clinics, prisons, and other institutions, asking them through bogus foundations to carry out research projects and find out what LSD was and how people reacted. The CIA wanted to know if it might be used as some kind of biological weapon, a truth serum for interrogation, a way to control young minds. The CIA gave LSD to over 1,000 people in the San Francisco area. The mostly young adults who volunteered for these LSD experiments found it very pleasurable. Word got around quickly. Ken Kesey, the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, got his LSD in an experiment sponsored by the CIA. So did Robert Hunter, the lyricist for the Grateful Dead, and Allen Ginsberg, the poet who preached the value of the great personal adventure of using LSD. The CIA brought LSD to America. The ultimate irony is that the drug that the CIA hoped would be its key to controlling humanity actually wound up fueling a generational rebellion that was dedicated to shunning money, materialism, and politics, and the mainstream values of the time. Flowers and peace threatened the establishment. The drug was proving to be a way to get in touch with divine love. When the agenda of the CIA didn't pan out, when hippies and college students protested against hate and war and refused to be drafted, the government shut down all research of psychedelics, informing us that taking psychedelics was much like Russian roulette, that it scrambled your chromosomes, crippled your fetus, and could drive you to insanity. By 1970, the line of inquiry and all testing and research completely stopped, and we moved into the dark ages regarding psychedelics. The drug was then assigned as a Schedule I drug under the Controlled Substances Act, which meant it provided us with no accepted medical use, a high potent potential for abuse, and a lack of accepted safety for use. Timothy Leary, expert on personality and research, professor at Harvard University, showed up on the Merv Griffin show and told people to tune in, turn on, and drop out. He told the world to think for themselves, to question authority, and that psychology wasn't doing much to solve the problems of human emotions or mental dysfunctions. Quote, LSD is Western yoga. The aim of all Eastern religion, like the aim of LSD, is basically to expand your consciousness and find ecstasy and revelation within, end quote. A tape was discovered at the White House and released years later, where Nixon told his colleagues, you know what? To salvage our approval ratings, to misdirect attention away from this flagging war in Vietnam, the stagnant economy and our swooning poll numbers, we need to find a villain. A guy in a black hat, and why not choose Timothy Leary? He's sort of the godfather of the counterculture revolution, and we can make him public enemy number one. And then Nixon told the American people that Timothy Leary was really the most dangerous man in America. This is how the history of psychedelics was created by our leaders. In a nutshell, the hippie movement was started by the CIA and came to a screeching halt in 1971 when authority recognized this drug did exactly the opposite of what they had wanted. In his recent book, How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan documents the comeback trail. He starts telling us about, in 2006, Switzerland being the only country to take on the research and experimentation. The goal was to return psychedelics to scientific and cultural respectability. And now 50 years after Nixon's manipulations, it is happening in a big way. Again, studies show that psychedelic-assisted therapy can have many long-lasting positive health outcomes for patients, and that no serious adverse effects were reported by participants in any of these studies as long as they were monitored by professional licensed psychotherapists to help guide the patient if needed. We now know that LSD or magic mushrooms are not considered to be addictive, and both are practically impossible to have an overdose. The only exception is that psychedelics are counterindicated for people with serious mental health conditions such as psychosis or brain injuries. Psychedelics are making a comeback through science, through medicine, and the FDA drug development process. Today, the large-scale studies are requiring proof of safety and efficacy before there is approval for prescription use. This is to ensure what happened once won't happen again. This past June, Rick Dobrin received over 11,000 people attending his MAPS convention in Colorado with scientists who were rubbing shoulders with shamans, guides, doctors, therapists, journalists, and filmmakers. There were over 400 workshops being given to help educate those who wish to learn more and possibly get involved with becoming healers of the psyche. It was also Rick Dobrin, executive director of MAPS, who said that psychedelics gave him his connection to spirituality, which unfortunately his bar mitzvah did not produce. So Dobrin decided to focus his life on changing the laws and becoming a legal psychedelic psychotherapist. The message that Dobrin wants to convey: psychedelics need to be rebranded in the public mind, and that it is essential to steer clear of anything that smacks of recreational use. The moment is ripe for psychotherapy to consider a completely new paradigm. Dobrin emphasized in his trials that each research volunteer have a psychedelic experience be supervised by 1 or 2 professional psychotherapists called facilitators or guides who help individuals along in their psychedelic journey. The scientific professionals who deal with psychedelics agree that these drugs allow us to reboot the brain. All those deep grooves that lock us into the patterns, both thought and behavior, are dissolved and temporarily suspended in a way that allows us to break old patterns of thinking and feeling. It is proving to be a game changer in the world of healing the psyche. After a medicine trip is over, the professionals help the one taking the medicine to make sense or integrate what took place during their journey. That's quite different. People used to take it recreationally. Now it's being supervised and it's going through all the proper channels for approval. One research volunteer who suffered from thyroid cancer talked about having had unstoppable loops of rumination and worry. He was unable to escape his own thinking. He wrote, "During my direct experience of psilocybin, I went into a dark place from childhood, having now an opportunity to revisit those difficult times. I was faced with my own extension of the world, and the gate between me and my deeper soul flew wide open. At first, it felt threatening, and then I kept coming back to an overall feeling of gratitude and pure appreciation for the person I am. I experienced genuine self-love and self-acceptance, which had never been available to me before. I kept having the urge to direct the incredible amount of energy that was flowing through my body to my thyroid and encouraged it to heal. In the end, I felt honest and delicious, unconditional self-love. I came away with total clarity about close relationships and my part in the conflict that I was having. I stopped blaming others. I had a deep knowing inside that everything would be okay, even if the world ended tomorrow." End quote. Another woman, Dinah, who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, said this: "I was paralyzed by the fear of a cancer reoccurrence and spent my days waiting for the other shoe to drop. After I took psilocybin, I was told by a loving voice to just go with my fear. I saw my fear almost as if in a dream. My fear was located on my left side, and to my surprise, it was not my tumor I was looking at, but this black thing in my body. It made me immensely angry, and that anger enraged by my fear. I screamed, 'Get out! I won't be eaten alive!' And then the fear was gone. I felt empowered knowing that I had driven the fear away with my anger. The epiphany was of overwhelming love as my thoughts turned from my fear to my children. Then, even though I am a solid atheist, I heard a voice say, 'I am bathed in God's love.' That phrase was unsettling to use, but nevertheless, I heard it. The cancer may be out of my control, I realized, but the fear was not." End quote. Another area that psychedelics are helping is depression and those who are contemplating suicide. One young man said this, quote, "It wasn't that long ago I was giving up on life. I'd been suicidal before, but never like this. I was depressed and felt desperate. At some point during my psychedelic journey, my grandmother came to me It was my dad's mom who died when I was 10, but I always had a soft spot in my heart for her. She was speaking to me while she put her hand on my shoulder. She told me she was going to remove my desire to die and the suicidal thoughts from my mind for good. She explained that now I had to learn to live, no longer just survive day to day. The focus of my life since then is learning how to live again. People don't realize that Bill Wilson, co-founder of AA and one of the Time magazine's 100 most influential people of the 20th century, was administered a psychedelic, and that's how he got sober. It helped him to transform his thinking about his addiction and then to come up with the 12-step program. His LSD experience had a vision of seeing this chain of drunks around the world, all helping one another. Wilson's experience inspired one of the greatest spiritual methods of self-improvement of the 20th century. Alcohol was killing a man we'll call John, and he was in his 20s. He started when he was barely 13. His first AA meeting was at 16. AA didn't work, nor did any other method or rehab. He was told by his doctor that he was drinking himself to death. His last hope was psilocybin. He signed up with another 92 participants for a double-blind study incorporating psychotherapy and psilocybin. The results of that study? More than 83% drastically reduced their drinking. 48% were completely abstinent for 8 months after receiving their first dose. Psilocybin makes it possible for the brain to change, and that change is called neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to modify, change, or adapt. Psilocybin makes the brain more malleable. It flattens the brain's landscape and opens up the rigidity of the depressed to allow new thoughts, insight, and perspectives to emerge. John is now attending AA regularly and has held a job for 6 months. Ketamine is another drug first used by emergency responders during the Vietnam War for agitated soldiers who were considering suicide. That's how doctors began to realize that the drug had powerful effects against depression and suicidal thoughts. And it's now being used for people who have no other way of trying to take a hold of getting rid of their depression, and it's working miracles. And this from Jane, a woman who suffered from anxiety and depression, quote, "I focused my energy inward to get the most of the experience. The more I breathed, the more the fear would dissipate, the more my subconscious would open up. I went to a frightening memory from childhood, which usually overwhelmed me. But this time, it felt as though I was finally letting go and surrendering. The more I surrendered into the fear, the more I tapped into an elevated place. And then I kept coming back to an overall feeling of gratitude and pure appreciation for the person I am. I experienced genuine self-love and self-acceptance, which had never been available to me before. I encouraged myself to heal. And in the end, I felt honest and wonderful self-love. Once again, I came away with clarity about how I needed to be more vulnerable in my close relationships." Josh Jacob, the 56-year-old part-time website developer from County Durham in Northern England, had battled depression for 30 years and had tried talking therapies and many types of antidepressants with no success. His mother's death came from cancer, followed by a friend's suicide, had left him at one of the lowest points yet. Searching online to see if mushrooms sprouting in his yard were the hallucinatory kind, he had come across a pioneering medical trial at the Imperial College in London. Listening to music and surrounded by candles and flowers in the decorated clinical room, Josh anxiously waited for the drug to kick in. And after 50 minutes, he saw bright lights leading into the distance and embarked on a 5-hour journey where he would relive a range of childhood memories and confront his grief. For the next 3 months, his depressive symptoms waned. He felt upbeat and accepting, enjoying pastimes he had come to feel apathetic about, such as walking through the Yorkshire countryside and taking photographs of nature. For depressed patients, the response is remarkably positive. Paul Stamets, expert on mushrooms, mycologist, originator of the Center for Ecological Consciousness, is talking about his first psilocybin mushroom journey on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. And he announced how one experience, one journey stopped a lifetime of stuttering. In 1963, when Aldous Huxley, author of Brave New World, lay dying from cancer, he asked his wife, Laura, to give him LSD. The results were recorded in a letter from Laura to Huxley's brother. She wrote, quote, "Suddenly he had accepted the fact of death, which had not happened until then. He had taken the medicine which released him from this earth," end quote. Rick Dobrin believes that psychedelics helped him understand humanity, of our unity with all life, and that it has the potential to be the antidote to tribalism, to fundamentalism, to genocide and environmental destruction. Monumentous shifts in perspective can come from fleeting moments of epiphany, such as those experienced by the crew of Apollo 8, but also through psychedelics and holotropic breathwork. There's also a big movement towards microdosing. For many who are microdosing, anxiety and depression are being lessened or completely stopped. Some people are also being helped with other ailments such as neuropathy and cataplexy. At this moment in time, the use, sale, and possession of psychedelics in the United States is illegal under federal law. But also note, California is on its way to becoming the third state in the country to decriminalize psychedelics after the state assembly passed a bill that would allow adults 21 and older to possess and use small amounts of plant and mushroom psychedelics. Senate Bill 58 was passed in a 42-11 vote Wednesday, this last Wednesday, and would make several naturally occurring psychedelic substances, including psilocybin and psilocin, legal within the state. In addition to decriminalizing personal possession and cultivation, the bill also aims to establish community-based healing practices that promote group therapeutic use of psychedelics. So they've been illegal since 1970, but they're still categorized as a Schedule I substance under the Controlled Substances Act across the country, except for a few states. The potential of these drugs is so great, it would be a tragedy if we lost the moment again. But this doesn't seem to be what is happening with so much research being done and so much positive information being published. People who experience psychedelics are having more appreciation for all of life. They are awakening to concerns for society and planetary values. They are learning to form new, healthier habits, experiencing a more enhanced imagination and increasing ability to creative problem solving. We are on the threshold of finding psychedelics the most helpful medicine to appear in decades. I'd like to take a couple of questions right now, if you're interested, before I stop. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions? Yes.
What kind of research is being done on the spiritual side of genetics?
On the spiritual side of the genetics of mushrooms.
Yeah, how they are composed and how they evoke a spiritual or journey for the people that are involved with it. In other words, what are the receptors, et cetera, that are involved?
Well, it's a serotonin uptake in the frontal lobe, and more than that, you'll have to do more research. Art.
We have a question on Zoom as well.
Okay, Art.
Hey, Diane, you said something that was kind of interesting. I wanted to show that.
Just one thing? Okay.
It was, you mentioned it was possible to overdose on LSD.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I heard that right. And
Yeah.
an anecdote.
I read that again and again. You can get pretty overwhelmed and go into deep places and not come out for a while, but you can't overdose on it.
And I love the Colin book, and I'm friends who've had experiences similar to yours. Why do these drugs work that typical drugs that psychiatrists administer to patients don't work? Antidepressants, short-term anti-anxiety medication.
Yeah, well, the difference is because these psychedelics actually change what goes on in our brain. So we become, you know, the brain gets more amenable. And doesn't necessarily always change your life. You need to work through what took place with someone who knows how to do that with you. So that's called the integration, which is a big change. One more question from Zoomland.
We actually have two. Let's go with Ted first. Ted, please unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, Diane. Excellent presentation. I've been following MAPS for years and years now. In addition to a number of the issues that you brought up, I saw a very interesting program. This was a number of years ago. Some guy in Mexico had grand mal headaches, and they were so bad that he basically said, you know, he was going to commit suicide if he didn't find some solution. And lo and behold, he uses psilocybin once a month, and you know, and the headaches basically went away. So there are amazing therapeutic issues going on here, and I think when they discover the synaptic realization of all this, it's going to be a scientific breakthrough. Yeah, all the things that you've mentioned, PTSD, et cetera, are being successfully treated with psychotropics. An interesting aside, when I was a high school teacher up in Notre Dame in my ceramics class, I asked this kid named Shannon Leary if she was any relation to Tim Leary, and lo and behold, she was his niece. So I just thought that was like, what? Anyway, nice presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Ted. And Ted's absolutely right. And in the research I've done, cluster headaches in particular they've been very successful in getting rid of those as well. Thank you all.
No comment. Woo, okay, thank you, Diane. This morning's offering will now be given and received.
Judy just said you wouldn't have heard this at the Baptist church.
That's right. Please remember, we're a self-sustaining congregation and provide all financial resources for our many ministries. We recognize the spiritual value of generosity and invite you to participate. If you are viewing this service remotely, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Okay. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Please stand in body and/or spirit and sing the closing hymn, Answering the Call of Love.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, disrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
As we prepare to extinguish the chalice, let us recite the valediction. The flame of this chalice will no longer burn today, but the light of the flame within our hearts continues to shine brightly, illuminating the love felt in our community. Please extinguish your chalice at home. And now, let's form a circle and join hands for Diane's closing words.
Lori, we can't leave you out. Joni Mitchell wrote, "Life is for learning," in her song Woodstock. We already know that our planet is in crisis, and what we are learning from the field of data that is being published as never before is that psychedelics are a medicine that can help us tap into a paradigm shift in consciousness on this planet by restoring our mental, emotional, and spiritual health, uniting us in the perspective that we are all in this together. Thank you.
Nice job.